Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1114 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. One Piece is totally surreal right now. It's like unbelievable what we are learning. I honestly want to be hyped for you guys, I really do, but I kind of feel overwhelmed. That's just the truth. Literally, it feels like every single word that Vegapunk says brings us closer to the end of the story. But I'm not ready for it to be over. So it's a little bittersweet. So if I'm a little bit of a buzzkill right now, I'm not doing it intentionally, I swear. I'm like experiencing what is some of the greatest chapters ever written of all of One Piece, while simultaneously like coping with one of the stages of grief. Does anyone else feel this way? Am I alone? Do I have Nakama? Let me know. But of course, you already know, right? You guys already know what we're gonna do today. JB theories with this chapter, what's going to happen. It's time to make theories. This chapter continued where the last one ended, thank God, with the reveal, speculation from Vegapunk, that the world is going to sink into the oceans. So we begin with the reaction from people across the world reacting to this statement, and a lot of it initially is like, no way, that doesn't make sense. Oda was absolutely in his bag when he chose to pan to Mocktown. If you guys remember, Mocktown is in Jaya, and their whole thing was that like, the dreams of pirates and the wacky things that people believe across the world is all ludicrous. Little do they know. It's actually kind of funny to me that One Piece is like a conspiracy theory brought to life. I feel like Oda, hear me out, I feel like Oda is a conspiracy theory, like he's like I don't know what they call them, QAnon, nut job, you know, that sort of thing. Like, that is what Oda actually is. The Freemasons, the Illuminati, our demon overlords. JFK was assassinated by the CIA, like, that's Oda's vibe. Bro's got his Bigfoot travel guide. But you know, guys, oftentimes, truth is stranger than fiction. I kind of feel like One Piece encourages this mindset. Seek truth. Not just to think critically about things, but to actually travel the world and experience it. You'll learn some things which challenge your notion of reality. So I appreciate the social commentary. But to be fair to the poor residents of Mocktown, what Vegapunk is saying is pretty ridiculous, which I think many One Piece fans relate with pretty heavily. Like, how does this make sense? The world sinking into the oceans essentially forces you to rewrite your understanding of like how the world actually works. And make no mistake, this is actively occurring in present, right? We are, as civilization, learning new things every day about how our world or whatever works. But like, I feel like this is almost a time capsule. Like, through One Piece, we're experiencing what the world was like, more so in the past, when there was comparatively more of the world to discover. The fact that Oda has sort of like captured this energy of adventure is pretty spectacular. But the thing is that Vegapunk is right. He has actually done the work that other people don't want to do and straight up are incapable of doing, and the world actively prevents people from trying to do. So let's raise a glass for our homie. And in honor of his legacy, we should be doing the same thing. Reevaluating how the world of One Piece works. But yeah, I really appreciate how Vegapunk actually tackled this much like a debate. You know, like he knew how the world would react to his statement that the world is going to sink into the ocean. He's like, well, they're not going to believe that. So he put his nuts on the line and offered up a prediction. If his prediction is true, hear him out. And if it's not true, ignore him. But yeah, there's a lot of context about this that I feel like discussing because I find it to be interesting. We learned in this chapter that Vegapunk essentially recorded this message a few days before Lolosia. Which, if you guys remember, we made a theory about Vegapunk, what his plan is, and we speculated that this message actually was recorded today. That's not true, that was wrong, but it was recorded relatively recently. And the thought that I love about this is I love when smart people are actually acting smart. This whole story with Vegapunk has come to a head recently. Like, within the last couple of days, Vegapunk's plan has coalesced. This is almost set up exactly the same as how Vegapunk designed the Pacifista and Jewelry Bonnie. That basically there's like a trigger within the Pacifista to follow Bonnie. But this is only ever really discovered when you set the Pacifista on her. If this doesn't happen, she doesn't discover that she has this power. No one discovers that she is the ultimate authority chip. Likewise, if Vegapunk's sensors don't detect the use of the weapon, we're probably not here right now, Vegapunk recording this message and revealing it to the world. Because again, the whole purpose of this message is to communicate to the world that he believes that they are in danger. They're in danger because of the thing that he invented. As a side note, we all know that Vegapunk is designed based on Einstein, right? But whenever I bring this up, there's a few people who correctly point out in the comments there's a lot of Oppenheimer in him as well. And like, it's clear that a lot of this is inspired by the development of atomic weapons. Their creation and their use is obviously very important to the people of Japan for obvious reasons. If you haven't watched the newest Oppenheimer movie, I highly suggest that you do that. That was an incredible movie. But to get back on track here, because Vegapunk correctly predicted that in a few days the sea levels would rise, it basically means that he knew that his weapon, the Mother Flame, would be utilized destructively. So the government dug their own grave here. But I feel like from this, there's little details or little truths that we can parse from it. Like the assumption that I have, I think that this was stated in the story, I would need to reread it, but it's that York gave the world nobles and the Gorosei the Mother Flame secretly. And actually, yes, this is true, chapter 1089. So from the moment that he detected the use of this weapon or suspected its use, then he would know that he's been betrayed. And this reveal might actually explain why, when we have this recording right now that we're watching, York is not there. I mean, York may not be there normally just because of how she functions as a part of the Vegapunk hive body, but it all just seems so much more intentional. And it also creates the impression that Vegapunk let some of this happen. And I suppose another thing to add on to this is how much Vegapunk seemed to have kept from York. Like, York wasn't aware of the message, York wasn't aware of the trick Dendenmushi, like, Vegapunk kept her in the dark about essentially everything important. And it heightens the feeling for me of this being a cleverly laid trap. But the other thing that I feel like that this communicates is that a lot of this derives from Vegapunk's understanding of the world. He has already figured out aspects of the world, and so is just applying his knowledge of the world to the use of the weapon. And I think this might also potentially relate to Oppenheimer and the development of atomic weapons. Again, watch Oppenheimer. But scientists believed legitimately at the time that there was a possibility that if they fired a nuclear weapon, the atmosphere might catch fire. And I kind of feel like Oda took that literally. But anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I thought it was really cool how we panned to Doflamingo, and Doflamingo is very much not shocked by this reveal. Doflamingo remains goated. Also thought it was hilarious that Oda chose to pan to the fishermen, because like all the people that you could potentially pan to about the world potentially sinking into the ocean, and these are the one group of people where it really doesn't matter. But then from this statement alone, you can see how much panic that this created in the Gorosei. Like, things escalated from this moment extraordinarily. They went from, let's eradicate the broadcast snail, to, no, let's just kill everybody that is here. Every living thing that you can see. And it shows you that not only do the Gorosei believe that the world might fall into the ocean, that this is like knowledge that they are protecting at all costs. Probably one of the big reasons why the Void Century is voided. And I think that this also tells you something. Like, if Imu knows that the possibility exists that the world might sink into the sea, or is actively doing that, and then by using the weapon, almost instantly, the water levels around the world raised by 1 meter, then Imu did that on purpose. They fired the weapon knowing what would happen. So it might be true to say that Imu is actively looking forward to the day that the world sinks into the ocean. This is considered a desirable outcome. And this probably also justifies why Egghead has just not been totally annihilated already. The Mother Flame is protecting everybody right now. Because of their desire to not destroy this thing, is holding them back. So my assumption is that essentially Imu intends to use the Mother Flame. They want this thing so that they can continue to sink the world. That is like in-game world government plan. Maybe something that they would already have done had they had access to this power source. So I guess this begs the question of like, why, right? Why do they want to sink the world? And of course, the easy answer to all this is they're evil, JB. Do they need any other reason? Maybe not. But we have the red line, right? And that seems to be safe. They've also been building Tequila Wolf for 700 years. Tequila Wolf is a bridge. It's pretty high. I'm assuming that is also safe. I like to view Imu and the government as entities which their primary motivation is self-preservation. That's just how I like to view it. I also apply this to the real world as well. I'm really sorry if you feel threatened by this knowledge, but government's primary directive is self-preservation, and not really protection of the people, or the pursuit of their wishes. So maybe the only realistic threat to the world government at this point in time is the individual islands, right? Most of the islands that exist, if they banded together, they could defeat the world government. So if the world floods, basically all the chips are in the world government's hands. They own the red line, and they can choose who they want to save, and discard everybody else. Or maybe this is just a really clever way of destroying your enemies, right? The impression that I have of Emu is that he's an angry little guy. I don't know, that's the vibe I get. But it's pretty clever that instead of declaring war, and like actively destroying these islands, maybe the intention all along was to let the world flood. Nobody knows exactly what's happening, but you're causing it. And then suddenly everybody that you hate is dead. Perhaps this is some sort of revenge story 800 years in the making, but you still get to be the hero, offering the salvation of the Red Line. Vegapunk's reveal would obviously threaten this, but you guys know how it is. I don't actually have the answers, we can only speculate. I just want to point out to you that I think that it's pretty likely that Emu is flooding the world on purpose, and there is probably some reason. Throughout all this, we got some pretty awesome action between the Strats and the Gorosei, and just following the Gorosei, being able to hear their thoughts as Vegapunk's message is going, created a lot of tension, I thought. It was also through them that I felt like Oda was best able to convey the importance of the Mother Flame regarding everything that is taking place right now. And then we actually got to see it. Literally a flame suspended in water. But I guess here's the best place to go off about the world. If you guys haven't watched my last video talking about the insane truth of the world or the insane secret of the world, I highly suggest that you do that. I do kind of wonder if maybe that video was a little bit too complicated or I didn't explain properly everything that sort of goes into it. But the baseline theory of all of it is that the world of One Piece right now is built atop of the world that existed before. We're living on the Sky Islands of the past, i.e. it is a hollow earth theory. Not entirely hollow, but there's like a space that exists below everything, which is why the weapon goes actually through the earth and water seems to be pouring endlessly to nowhere. But yeah, I didn't realize fully how much this chapter adds to the thoughts from that idea in a number of really surprising ways. And the Mother Flame is one of those ways. So one of the important theories within that video is essentially how these Sky Islands are created. This was basically already explained to us in Skypiea, but it's explained to us in a way which it's not really fully explained. We don't really understand it. They're just words, lacking context. But what we know is that Oda created a chemical, a scientific compound called pyrobloin. This is released by volcanic activity, reacts with water, creates Sky Islands. And I'm pretty certain that Oda took the time to create this compound pyrobloin, keratin, because it's important. But it's a question of like what it actually is. So my theory is that pyrobloin is an incorrect translation, similar to how raftel was an incorrect translation. The L and R in Japanese is interchangeable, so it is pyrobrine. Pyrobrine separates into two words, pyro meaning fire, brine meaning salt water. You can think about water on fire. That is what Oda had in mind when he named the substance. And then in this chapter, we see the Mother Flame suspended in water. Literally fire and water. So pyrobrine is important in the creation of Sky Cloud. It might have something to do with fire and water. And straight up, I do not think that it is a coincidence that in Egghead, we see that Vegapunk has created Sky Cloud. That is what the lab in Egghead resides on. So it makes me wonder if the Mother Flame is responsible for creating this Sky Cloud that we see on Egghead. But this is kind of difficult to explain. I hope I don't lose people. You should really watch that video. But I kind of got to approach this assuming that you haven't. The idea is that Oda was heavily inspired by climate change and current discourse around that. Basically what everybody knows, what is taught everywhere, is that we are burning fossil fuels as a form of energy, and that this might lead to the destruction of the world, in very simple terms. But climate change is basically explained like this. We burn fossil fuels and it produces a substance which then exists in our atmosphere, carbon dioxide. But in the One Piece world, this does not produce carbon dioxide, this produces Sky Cloud. And I just want to point out the missed opportunity here where Oda could have used methane. Basically farts, which is in fact a superior greenhouse gas. Like you can even think about it on an even deeper level. Carbon dioxide is released when we burn fossil fuels, but carbon dioxide is also released, for instance, in volcanic activity, similar to pyrobrine. So the subtext of all this, broken down to its simplest form possible, is that the energy source that Vegapunk is striving for creates a byproduct which threatens to change the world and raise sea levels. But of course, carbon dioxide is a derivative of organic material. We are organic material. We breathe in oxygen, but then we breathe out carbon dioxide. Fossil fuels such as coal and oil and natural gas are all derived from life. So once again, fossil fuels are used as an energy source in the real world. The Mother Flame is being used as an energy source in the world of One Piece. I think that the Mother Flame is derivative of life as well. Basically, the unlimited energy that Vegapunk is able to tap into with the Mother Flame is life. And I go more in depth into this concept with the video Sanji, Power of the Sun. You should watch that one too. How you can relate this to Buddhist concepts. And I think that this most likely relates to Haki as well. Haki is essentially the power of life force. So the Mother Flame burns souls, like we burn fossil fuels. That was the thought. But anyway, let's ground this for a second, right? Like, there's a huge difference between the story of One Piece and the real world. Despite the fact that in the world of One Piece, the sea levels are rising, it's not for the same reason that people speculate with real world climate change. The thought there is that we are melting our polar ice caps. And this is definitely true. I really doubt that that is the case in the world of One Piece. So just think about that for a moment. Like, just take the time, open up your mind. Sea levels are rising. Where is this water coming from? The only way to make it make sense is to have some pretty fantastical ideas. And this is one of the biggest reasons why I think that Sky Cloud has enormous possibility. If the world is built atop of Sky Cloud from the past that covered the entire sky, metaphorically like the apocalyptic conclusion of the release of greenhouse gases, you could just think about the nature of the ground differently. The world everything sits on is unstable. And if you imagine a sea that used to exist on the surface, but the surface was covered up by Sky Cloud and now exists underneath the surface, that barrier seems permeable. It seems like water could realistically leak from within the earth to the surface. And if you imagine a layer of actual earth atop this sky cloud that people are actually living on, because there is actual earth, you could see how earthquakes might create openings for water to escape from within the planet to the actual seas. And later in the chapter, what does Oda show us? He shows us sky cloud ground moving or stretching. And we also talked a little bit about how this might relate to Luffy and or Nika. But anyway, I don't want to spend this entire video to re-explain the video that I just made. I want to add on to it. Guys, the Mother Flame is like this flame suspended in water. In that video, we speculated that the boiling of oceans is important to create pyrobrine or fire saltwater. Pyrobrine, which is important in creating a sky cloud. I truly wonder if the difference between the eternal flame and the Mother Flame is simply whether or not you place this flame in the ocean rather than in a container. Once you place it in the ocean, it's eternal energy because it's burning the life force which exists within the sea, literally turning that life force into Sky Cloud, which exists in this pseudo heaven. You can begin to think of Sky Cloud as containing essence of life, like a real heaven. I guess what I'm trying to say is I kind of think that the Eternal Flame is responsible for an apocalyptic event in the past. Like Vegapunk is describing right now, we flew too close to the sun and it burned us. In the past, someone just like Dr. Vegapunk created the Eternal Flame. This flame was placed within the oceans themselves. The byproduct was Sky Cloud. This led to Sky Cloud covering the skies, and eventually an apocalypse, as it cast the original world in a darkness, which eventually became a hell. All of this fits way too perfectly for me. I promise you guys, I will be stuck in this headcanon for quite a while, until Oda tells me otherwise. But there's another thing from this chapter that adds on to this theory in a very abstract way. I'm curious as if anyone else is talking about this. But the end of this chapter messes with my mind. I'll explain in a moment. So Vegapunk pivots from this conversation about the state of the world and its potential dangers to the Ancient Kingdom, likely implying that the Ancient Kingdom is in some way related to this potential catastrophe. I thought it was incredibly interesting how Oda devoted a panel to explain to us that the Celestial Dragons weren't even aware that the Void Century was even a thing. That speaks volumes. We also got an incredible panel, almost an emotional panel for me, focusing on Jaguar D. Saul. Like, official, it is confirmed Jaguar D. Saul is alive, and he is soaking all of this up. And the same goes for the panel with Robin overhearing Vegapunk talk about the Scholars of Ohara. That was great as well. But anyway, Vegapunk begins to explain the Ancient Kingdom, and he tells us, well, he only knows a fraction of it, which is true. So he's not going to bother to speculate, which is like, come on, Vegapunk. Like, we want you to speculate more than anybody. Honestly, a cop-out. Oda just doesn't want to let the cat out of the bag because if Vegapunk speculates, he'll be right. Not that I would ever really compare myself to Vegapunk, but just like philosophically, man, I am like diametrically opposed. I would be sharing my theories. If history is a story, I'd want to tell it. Although, kind of like Vegapunk, maybe it's not my place. Parallels everywhere. But Vegapunk wants to stick with the facts, and the first fact that he reveals to us is about Joy Boy. Joy Boy fought with a stretchy and elastic body. Basically, Joy Boy possessed the Gomu Gomu no Mi, or the Nika fruit, and he was the first man to take to the seas and be called a pirate. So first things first, this was a massive theory dub for me and the channel because as far as I'm aware, I'm the first person to ever make a legitimate theory that Joy Boy was a pirate. And based on this alone, it's practically confirmed that Joy Boy became the king of the pirates, being the first one. That seems likely, which is another thing that we also speculated. Honestly, it's so easy to forget because it was so long ago, but that theory was such a big deal at the time, and I was super excited to share that with people. And then from that point onwards, it just felt like headcanon. Like community headcanon. There's nobody who heard that didn't believe that was true, because it just made too much sense. So am I gonna pat myself on the back? You damn well sure I will. Especially since I get comments on nearly every video of like, this dude is never right. The tears taste so good. Suck it. So now that I got that out of my system, every time I get a theory right, I say pretty much the same thing, which is that the perfect theory for me is when I'm really close to being true, but there are still details that I'm missing that Oda adds on that even when the reveal comes, you still think about the story a little bit differently. Being almost correct is like the perfect way of existing. Because what I said was true, but there's still more to discover. And once again, Oda the Mad Lad makes it happen. The same thing holds true. Yes, Joy Boy is a pirate. Yes, he was probably the king of his kingdom that he created as a pirate, but he's also the first pirate, which is just like, what? So I guess this is a good place to start. We know that the Ancient Kingdom is heavily related to the poneglyphs. We know that the Ancient Kingdom was a highly advanced kingdom of the past. We learned in this chapter that Joy Boy was actually born in a very bountiful and advanced kingdom. It seems like Oda is trying to tell us that Joy Boy was born in the Ancient Kingdom, which means the Ancient Kingdom predates Joy Boy. It is not a kingdom that he created. But despite me being wrong about this, and basically everyone being wrong about this, this also lines up with a lot of things that I've been saying recently. It's just, like, we know, basically, that technology started to advance before the Void Century. Like, as just one example to sort of confirm this, we know that the people, the Shandians, the Sky People, came back to the Earth before 900 years ago. We know that Shandora was a prosperous city like 1,150 years ago, something like that. But we see them in the past on the moon, and they had automata. A lot of people also have pointed this out since reading chapter 1114, that it seems like the Eternal Flame is depicted in the murals on the moon for the Sky People, the Winged People, meaning that technology was developed before the Void Century as well. So the world had already advanced before the Void Century. The Advanced Kingdom, or the Ancient Kingdom, therefore predating the Void Century, makes a lot of sense. But what doesn't make any sense is Joy Boy being the first pirate. That does not make sense. How can Chewbacca live on the planet of Endor with a bunch of 2-foot-tall Ewoks? It does not make sense. Surely, as long as there is an ocean, there was a pirate at some point in time before Joy Boy. Surely. It makes you wonder if, at the time that Joy Boy was born, there wasn't an ocean. When there is an ocean, there has to be pirates. There is always criminals, right? On land, they call them bandits. On the ocean, they call them pirates. They have to exist. I'm just running with this, guys. I'm assuming that at the time Joy Boy was born, there wasn't an ocean. That, of course, is a ridiculous thought. It kind of works, however, if at the time, it was all just Sky Island. Are you guys following along with me? Am I off base for saying this? Like, if Oda just tells us that pirate as a term was invented because of Joy Boy. Joy Boy created pirate, which it means something different than what pirate actually means. You know, I don't know about that. I suppose the only way that it might work for me is if, like, at the time Joy Boy lived, nobody knew how to sail. He's the first one who figured out what a boat is. Or maybe the seas at the time were so difficult to sail, like the entire world was like the Grand Line, that it was just like the most foolish thing in the world to do, to take to the oceans, and Joy Boy was the first to really master it. Actually, I don't hate that. But it's really that, or there's no oceans. At least not yet. So I'm actually curious as to what you guys think about this, but that's where I stand regarding this. I think that Oda has the potential here to really turn the world upside down as far as we know it, and that's the spirit of One Piece. So it might be the most ridiculous thing that you've ever heard, that there was no oceans in the One Piece world in the past. But if I told you that earthquakes could potentially sink the land a few years ago, that was equally as unjustified. But I'm not sure that I actually said that. But the thing that I love so much about this is that, yes, we get the reveal of Joy Boy as a pirate, but he's the first pirate. And that changes things, right? You think about it differently. It forms different connections, and it makes me feel like whatever we thought before we were slightly wrong, even if we were right, and that always feels good. But for a more complete theory, and I'm just going to go through this quickly, I think that there was a world that exists underneath the world. A long time ago, thousands of years ago, I would actually argue, and I have a reason for this, more than 5,000 years ago, which is related to the Mayan calendar and the Mayan cycles of destruction. This was a place where people lived until the sky was completely covered in Sky Island, well before Joy Boy was born. However, this Sky Island was Sky Island like we see it today for thousands of years. Most likely this correlates with the calendar of the world being the sky calendar until 1500 years ago. But starting at 1500 years ago, the sky calendar becomes the sea circle calendar, and I think that this is basically when the red line was created. So maybe it's about 1500 years ago that the oceans started to form. But the oceans didn't immediately appear. It's possible that the oceans steadily appeared. So the world steadily filled up with water, so that you would have to wait some time before you legitimately had pirates. And the reason that nobody knows about this, like this should be something that people remember and was recorded, is because at some point in time, a Vegapunk-like punk records was created, which hooked up everybody's minds to the centralized computer that computer was fiddled with, and when this information was deleted from the computer, it was deleted from the knowledge base of the world. They simply forgot. Maybe you can think of how Sugar's powers work from Dressrosa. But anyway, I don't want to continue on forever. I know that this is super headcanon-y. Some people like that, some people don't like that. But yeah, we went through this quickly. I hope that makes some sense to you. For now, that's my headcanon. And I suppose we'll see what Oda actually does with it when he gets there. This is just a placeholder. But yeah, it goes without saying that this was an incredible chapter of One Piece. This is a number 1114 is going to be a number that I remember forever. And I'm pretty confident that the next chapter is going to be very similar. This is like the peak time to be reading One Piece. I haven't enjoyed One Piece on a chapter by chapter basis as much as this since the Reverie, and before that, like Marineford. We're talking about rarefied freaking air. This is awesome, and I cannot wait for more. But yeah, some closing random thoughts that I had is it seems like Saturn was kind of affected by the Mother Flame. Like, the Mother Flame hurt Saturn? Certainly, it felt that way, and that's something that wouldn't be surprising to me. I also think that the Mother Flame is related to the Eternal Flame, which is related to Nika. Like, Luffy's heartbeat turns on the ancient weapon robot, and it's supposed to be powered by the Eternal Flame. I think that the Eternal Flame is very related to Nika, and therefore Luffy's powers, so I think Luffy might have the trump card in order to defeat the Gorosei. He's just not quite aware of what that is yet, and how to utilize it. I've also seen a lot of discussion about how this chapter confirms that Joy Boy is not Nika, because there's this legend of Nika from Elbaf, and Vegapunk describes Joy Boy as like him, but not him. And this has always been my headcanon. Joy Boy ate the Nika fruit. It is very possible that the fruit existed before Joy Boy, somebody ate it, and also utilized the powers. I also believe in cyclical time, meaning events are repeating themselves now, meaning that during Joy Boy's time, events could have also been repeated. So there was a Joy Boy before Joy Boy. It is also quite possible that the devil fruit is based on an entity, Nika, which at some point was real and existed, which I personally think is true. But yeah, I think that that's what I had to say today. I also appreciated that Oda decided to show Akainu and show Aokiji, because I think that those are two of the most interesting characters right now, and their perspectives on what is going on I would like to know. And I promise the last thing that I want to mention is that now that we know that earthquakes are such a dangerous power in the world of One Piece, Blackbeard makes so much sense. I got a lot of these comments with my theory video from the other day, and it's insanely true. The power of darkness and the power of earthquakes is going to come up in the actual world. But that's all I had to say today. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Whether you noticed something from the chapter that I might have missed, just share your thoughts. Remember to check out my book, The Boom. Link is in the description. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.